Hey folks, Seth Leibson here. It's that time of year again. Guns Etc. huge anniversary event. This year it's on Saturday, October 24th only. There'll be tons of giveaways and one-day only discounts in the store. Over the years, this event has turned into a gathering of folks who love America and the right to bear arms. As you know, our world may dramatically change on November 3rd. Can you imagine what a Biden-Harris administration will do to the Second Amendment then? If you're concerned about that, make sure you visit Guns Etc. on Saturday, October 24th. For more information, go to gunsetcetera.com. And if you like these monologues, please subscribe to 960 The Patriots YouTube channel. Welcome back and happy October 15th, 2020. In his message to Congress on July 4th, 1861, Abraham Lincoln asked an important and unique question. Are all the laws but one to go unexecuted, and the government itself go to pieces, lest that one be violated? I thought of that this morning as I listened to the Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee rattling off every reason they could to point to how anomalous the nomination of Amy Barrett was at this time, at this moment. They said they would never forget this. They said it was an offense against tradition. They said it was a breaking of faith. Cory Booker used his time to talk about what a broken country we were and discussed Donald Trump's walk from the White House to St. John's Church and how inappropriate that was. I listened to Democratic senators in this hearing twice repeat the false history of Abraham Lincoln, claiming he said he wanted to wait for the people to decide in November before he filled a vacancy on the Supreme Court after Roger Taney died in October. This was an aping of a statement Kamala Harris made in the vice presidential debate that had already been fact-checked as wrong by the Washington Post. But there you saw Democrats on the committee ignoring the factual record to replant the fake history about Abraham Lincoln in order to make their specious argument sound precedential and moral. I listened to all this after the Democrats first refused to acknowledge hundreds of violent riots in the country, and then when forced to, justified them as either peaceful or understandable. Riots that have taken the lives of more than 30 people and injured and killed over 700 policemen. I listened to all this after witnessing how the Democrats handled the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. I listened to all this after Mazie Hirono accused via too clever by half questioning Amy Barrett of sexual assault in public. I listened to all this after Cory Booker used the confirmation hearing to speechify that Donald Trump won't denounce white supremacy. I listened to all this as I heard other Democratic senators proclaim Donald Trump is responsible for over 200,000 deaths in America. Let me pause and remind of something here. On the issue of the 200,000 deaths, please keep in mind that if Deborah Birx is one of the scientists we're supposed to listen to, it was back in March that she said if we do everything perfectly, we could still lose 200,000 Americans. I guess she's not a scientist we should listen to anymore. Back to what I was speaking of regarding the hearings. There the Democrats sat and lectured this morning about the uncouthness of nominating a justice to the Supreme Court at this time prior to an election. Do you think for one New York second the Democrats would not do this? Were they the majority in the Senate? And were they having a Democrat as president of the United States? Given all they have shown themselves for and willing to do you think they wouldn't do this? Hell, they're willing to destroy Brett Kavanaugh personally with allegations and charges that Sheldon Whitehouse thought it appropriate to bolster by publicly walking us all through Brett Kavanaugh's high school yearbook during the confirmation hearings. High school. And then use allegations proffered by Michael Avenatti's clients and have as the main witness someone whose main corroborating witness herself could not even recall ever having met Brett Kavanaugh or being at a party with him. And the Democrats sat there this morning lecturing us on inappropriateness and gaucherie. I watched all this morning, the day after a major news story broke, complete with chains of custody and on-the-record identifiable sources, that the nominee for the presidency of the Democratic Party's son put meetings together with his corporate partners and his father, who was then the vice president, all in an effort to leverage United States foreign aid to the Ukraine on the firing of a prosecutor intent on investigating the vice president's son's company. A story, by the way, the New York Times did not report on today, as CNN did not report on it. A story the Washington Post wrote about only in order to condemn not the former vice president or his son, but the on-the-record sources of the original story, to condemn the story, not the merits of the story. This is a story Facebook and Twitter banned from circulation, a story that led Twitter to suspend the account of the newspaper that broke it. And so I thought of these lectures on propriety and justice and political virtue from the Democrats, and made me think of Lincoln's question. Are all the laws but one to go unexecuted and the government itself go to pieces lest that one be violated? Is every norm and form of historical accuracy, decency, civility, and decorum, never mind freedom of speech and press, to go unexecuted but the nomination of Judge Barrett? The problem, of course, is even worse, since there is no law or constitutional wrong that prevents Judge Barrett's nomination. It is a fully constitutional discharge of duty by the President of the United States and the United States Senate. Not one law or constitutional provision is broken by this nomination. Indeed, the Constitution specifically, affirmatively states, quote, "The President shall nominate and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate shall appoint judges of the Supreme Court," close quote. He doesn't stop being president because it's October in an even-numbered year. As for the use and abuse of history regarding Abraham Lincoln and the appointment of a justice pending an election, the greatest living Lincoln scholar, a friend, a frequent guest of this show, Alan Gelzo, he wrote this, quote, "Lincoln made no comment of this nature about reserving such a nomination, nor was the nomination he did make, that of Salmon Portland Chase, affected by his reelection to the presidency on November 8, 1864. Lincoln understood his reelection to be in question only until mid-October 1864, after the vote pattern established in state elections in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana in October. Lincoln knew that his election was in no sense doubtful. When, on October 12, 1864, Chief Justice Roger Taney died, Lincoln at once began contemplating a replacement. Possible nominees included William Evarts, Montgomery Blair, his outgoing Attorney General, Edward Bates, and the Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, and these candidates were discussed by Lincoln in cabinet meetings. Lincoln, however, seems to have settled on Salmon P. Chase as a successor for Taney as early as June, even before Taney's death. Lincoln did not send Chase's name to the Senate for confirmation until December 6, 1864, after the election, for one very simple reason. The second regular session of the 38th Congress did not meet until December 5th, 1864. There was, in other words, no one to whom he could have sent the nomination until after the election. Lincoln cited this same reason on October 13th for not appointing a replacement for U.S. District Judge Albert White, explaining that he would defer the appointment of a judge until Congress reconvenes. There is no record of Lincoln offering any other reason for sending his nomination of Chase until Congress reassembled in December. That is why Lincoln did what he did in filling Justice Taney's seat. In fact, there's every reason to believe even if Lincoln did lose the election of 1864, he still would have filled Taney's seat before his successor was sworn in, just as John Adams did in 1801 after he lost the election but had a seat open for him to fill. But you see how the Democrats operate, right? Facts be damned. History be damned. Denunciations of white supremacists be damned. The Democrats are great white sharks, as Matt Hooper defined them in Jaws. We are dealing with a perfect engine, an eating machine, a miracle of evolution. And all the machine does is swim and eat and make little sharks, and that's all. How so? The Democrats are engaged in an unremitting, unrelentingly willful, knowing set of distortions. That's too soft, probably. They are engaging in an unremitting, unrelenting, willful, knowing aggregation of lies. And it constitutes the perpetration of a fraud on the American people. Not Republicans, the American people. Stop and pause a moment. Ask yourself, how many people do each and every one of you know that thinks Donald Trump has not denounced white supremacists or even actively praised them? How many people do each and every one of you know who think it is aberrant to go forward with Amy Barrett's nomination? How many people do you know who think Donald Trump is responsible for 200,000 or more deaths? How many people do you know who think it is the right that is responsible for the shredding of civility in this country? In a larger sense, the Democrats have played this country in a perpetration of frauds that is based and reliant on a perpetuation of lies. It's not the bigger the lie, the more apt it is to be believed. It's the more repeated the lie, the more disregard for the truth, the more bearing of the fact-checking that has made it more apt to be believed by the absence and burial of the fact-check. And also in a larger sense, there are two other things. Reaped by the misplaced moral indignation and lies, repeated lies of the Democrats and their chorus in the media. Secondary victimology, also known as blaming the victim. And let's call that for what it is: election fraud. It may not be illegal, but it is malevolent, and it's a malignancy on the body politic. I'm Seth Leibson. We'll be right back.